working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and joining me today from our EBC Vietnam Bureau, here's Chriselle Yacuna. Hello, Chriselle.
Hello, Alma. I'm Chriselle Yacuna from your EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Malacanang said President Duterte was not threatening to stop the operation of Facebook in the country when he scored the social media giant for taking down accounts and pages accounting or advocating something that is good for the people. Failure to control the pandemic in the Philippines has made the country's economic recovery uncertain. According to the World Bank's October 2020 economic update for East Asia and the Pacific report. And tourists to Boracay Island don't need to secure a travel authority from the Philippine National Police. And inclusive business models offer relief for ASEAN businesses hit by the pandemic. Malacanang said President Duterte was not threatening to stop the operation of Facebook in the country when he scored the social media giant for taking down accounts and pages advocating something that is good for the people. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Facebook's recent move is an act of censorship that suppresses freedom of speech. He also questioned the social media platforms singling out of pro-government pages by ignoring pages that criticize the administration. Take a look.
Bansa. Alam mo, pinaka-sensitive ang Pangulo dun sa Save Our Children page. Okay? Dahil yun po ay pinangangalagaan po ang kapakanan ng ating kabataan at sa larangan po ng international law, notorious po ang mga komunista in recruiting children as combatants, despite yung absolute ban on the recruitment of children as combatants. No? Iyan po isa sa mga advocacy pages na natanggal. Hindi po yan minimaintain ng gobyerno, pero yan po ay tumutulong sa advokasya ng gobyerno na isulong yung obligasyon natin sang-ayon po sa Geneva Conventions at dun sa additional protocols ng Geneva Convention at dun sa International Convention on the Rights of the Child. No? Bakit man po nga tinanggal yung ganyang advokasya? So, malinaw po ang Presidente, kinakailangang pag-usapan ito at hindi po kinukonsente ni Presidente ang censorship ng mga pro-government advocacies, no? Kasama na po itong advokasya to protect the children against child enlistment as combatants. Wala po yan ay advocacy groups, no? Ang punto dito, bakit kapag pabor sa gobyerno, tinatanggal? Kapag pabor sa oposisyon, hindi tinatanggal, no? Bakit ang fact-checkers laban sa gobyerno? Sino pa dito sa bayan na ito ang magdududa na ang Rappler at ang Vera Files ay talaga namang kontra sa administrasyon ni Presidente Duterte? Bakit sila lamang ang kinuhang fact-checkers ng Facebook? Hello, kung hindi ka kumpinsado na, na laban sila sa gobyerno, baka ikay taga-ibang planeta, no? So, anyway, ang iba't ibang mga bansa po ngayon, nagsisimula na yung proseso na gobyerno na ang kumukuha ng fact-checkers. Sinimula na po yan sa Europa at pag-aaralan po natin kung dapat gawin na natin yan. Dahil hindi naman tayo makakapayag ng fact-checkers, tanging mga laban lamang sa gobyerno.
The House of Representatives is set to launch a probe into social media giant Facebook's shutdown of advocacy pages that support the government. Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano said on Tuesday. In a statement, Cayetano said the chamber will investigate the matter after the passage of the proposed 2021 national budget. Cayetano slammed Facebook's partisan move as it took down verified accounts of Filipinos supporting the police and military while allowing the proliferation of Facebook accounts, pages, and communities that directly call for the violent overthrow of the democratically elected government. In the televised address on Monday night, President Rodrigo Duterte scored the social media giant for taking down accounts and pages advocating something that is good for the people. Duterte said on Facebook, it must explain its sweeping move against the Facebook accounts detailing the atrocities committed by the New People's Army or NPA, the armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines or the CPP. One of the pages shut down was the Hands Off Our Children, whose advocacy is to prevent minors from being recruited into organizations espousing violent extremism. Cayetano said while the government always welcomes dissent and protest, we should and will never tolerate violence and terrorism. India to loan Maldives $250 million to counter China's growing financial footprint in South Asia. Joining us live from Maldives is Steffi De Juan. Hello, Steffi.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. What's your update for us?
Yes. So here's the latest update from the island country of Maldives. India on Sunday announced a $250 million loan to Maldives to boost its coronavirus-battered economy in a further bid to counter China's growing financial footprint in South Asia. The Indian Ocean archipelago has been badly hit by the pandemic, with foreign tourists failing to flock back in large numbers after international flights restarted in mid-July. India's High Commission in Maldives said the loan was being provided after a request by Maldives President Ibrahim Mohamed Salih for financial assistance to overcome the difficult economic situation. The assistance follows a $500 million pledge by New Delhi in August to help build bridges and causeways. Under former President Abdullah Yamin's administration, which was ousted in 2018 elections, the Maldives borrowed some $1.4 billion from Beijing for expensive infrastructure projects. The loans added to critics concerned that Chinese aid in Asia and beyond was settling countries with unsustainable debts while expanding Beijing's sphere of influence. The bond takes New Delhi's total pledge financial assistance to the Maldives to over $2 billion since Salih came to power, according to India's foreign ministry. The country, which still has a nighttime curfew in place to combat with the coronavirus, has recorded more than 9,600 infections and 33 deaths from COVID-19. The Asian Development Bank forecasts the Maldives economy to contract by 20.5% this year compared to growth of 5.9% last year. And that's the latest news for today, Rachel.
Thank you, Steffi, for your updates, and looking forward for more of your updates there from Maldives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Reporting live from Maldives, this is Sept and we live in interesting times.
All right, to Thailand now. General Narongpan Jikaitwai takes over from General Apirat Kongsompong as the Royal Thai Army Chief during a ceremony at the Army's headquarters. Take a look. Now, General Apirat Kongsompong will now serve as Lord Chamberlain's deputy, a newly created position. He pledged to emulate his predecessor, who took a hard line against anti-government groups. He also pledged to defend the monarchy. Now, Thailand has seen a near daily protests for the past 2 months calling for reform of the monarchy. Army appointments are closely watched in Thailand. The military has taken power 13 times since the end of absolute monarchy in 1932. Current Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha seized power in a 2014 coup. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Do you want to earn a degree while you work? New Era University now offers Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETIAP. ETIAP is an educational scheme that recognizes knowledge, skills, and prior learning obtained by individuals from non-formal and informal education experiences. It is implemented through deputized higher educational institutions like the New Era University that awards the appropriate degrees. Programs offered are the following: Master's Program, Masters of Arts in Education, major in Educational Management, Master's Program in Business Administration, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Political Science, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Mass Communication, Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Filipino, major in English, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with majors in Human Resources Development, Marketing Management, and Financial Management. Beneficiaries must be Filipinos who have attained at least high school level of education. The program is flexible and you don't need to attend regular classes. Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETIAP, is under the supervision of Dr. Nilo L. Rosas, the University President, and Professor Anita P. Santos, Director of ETIAP. For more information, contact the following: Christina Moreno, 0995-138-0786, or email cvmoreno@meu.edu.ph, or Arlene Sarmiento, 0906-298-9150, or email cedctl@meu.edu.ph. What are you waiting for? Let New Era University be your partner in achieving your dreams.
Vietnam's economic growth picked up in the third quarter, boosted by a rally in exports as the country slowly emerges from a virus-induced slowdown. Vietnam has long been one of Asia's fastest-growing economies, as it is heavily reliant on exports, particularly after reaping the benefits of a trade spat between Washington and Beijing over the past 2 years. With much of the world economy effectively shut down for the long periods in the first and second quarter, gross domestic product expanded just 0.36% on year in April to May, though that was better than most countries which suffered painful contractions. But the General Statistic Office said Tuesday the economy grew 2.62% in July to September. The figure was helped by a surge in exports, which were up by 34% from the previous quarter and 11% up on year. However, the growth reading was still the slowest for a third quarter in nearly a decade. The World Bank in July predicted the economy would grow 2.8% in 2020, compared with expectations of a contraction in most countries around the world. However, that falls significantly short of the 6.8% target set by the government before the pandemic. Vietnam has recorded just 1,077 coronavirus cases and 35 deaths, with no community transmissions in nearly a month.
Failure to control the pandemic in the Philippines has made the country's economic recovery uncertain. That is according to the World Bank's Economic Update 2020 for East Asia and the Pacific report. Now, the Washington-based lender said the Philippine economy could worsen to a contraction of 9.9% this year from the baseline contraction of 6.9%. Next year, the bank said the economy could post a growth of only 2.9% if global growth remains anemic in 2021. Otherwise, GDP could reach a growth of 5.3% on the back of low base effects. With the pandemic and the economic uncertainty, the World Bank projects that poverty will increase to 22.4% this year, using a $3.2 US dollar per day poverty threshold. Indonesia and the Philippines face uncertain prospects. The region's two most populous countries after China have not so far succeeded in controlling the pandemic, according to the report. It added that Indonesia has not imposed strict lockdowns and seems to be relying on softer measures, while the Philippines has gone on a cycle of repeated strict lockdowns and reopenings. The World Bank also said while the Philippines, like Indonesia, could take advantage of its young population, it also suffers from a large informal sector and poor living conditions for a large fraction of their population. The Philippines is also expected by the World Bank to be more affected by the crisis than Indonesia because of its exposure to the global economy. World Bank Philippines senior economist Rong Kian said the country is far more dependent on tourism and exports compared to Indonesia. And this means the Philippines' economic recovery is also dependent on the recovery of its trade partners and the global economy.
President Xi once again congratulated Vietnam on its 75th National Day. In a phone call with Vietnam's Party Secretary General, State President Nguyen Phu Trong, Xi expressed his belief that the Vietnamese people under the leadership of the Communist Party of Vietnam will reap greater achievements in their national construction and development cause and successfully organize the party congresses at all levels and the 13th National Congress. The party and the state of China attach great importance to the neighboring and traditionally friendly relations with Vietnam, stressed Xi. He affirmed that China will continue proactive support for Vietnam to well undertake the roles as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council in the tenure 2020 to 2021 and the ASEAN 2020 chair. The Chinese leader also said he is willing to enhance strategic exchanges with Vietnamese senior leaders to promote practical and effective cooperation across fields in order to further broaden and deepen the bilateral ties and to contribute to peace and stability in the region around the world. Xi spoke highly of Vietnam's outcomes in combating the COVID-19 pandemic and the sides' cooperation in this fight. For his side, Trong extended congratulations on China's 71st National Day, wishing that the Chinese people will gain greater achievements under the leadership of the Communist Party of China.
In other news, tourists to Boracay Island don't need to secure a travel authority from the Philippine National Police. This was the comment of Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat when asked about the requirement by certain carriers of said travel authority. They also need a medical certificate from a government-accredited doctor. The negative RT-PCR test result will suffice, she said, as the Department of Tourism is now correcting the carriers on the requirements for tourists going to Boracay. Take a look. Now, this developed as the country's major carriers are cautiously mounting their flights to Caticlan, Aklan, the gateway to the world-famous Boracay Island. And as the latter starts accepting more tourists, even from general community quarantine areas. In a Viber message to the Business Mirror, Cebu Pacific Airways Vice President for Marketing and Customer Experience, Candice Iog, said, at the moment, loads for our flight to Boracay are still building. And he said that we intend to operate 3 times weekly beginning October 1, or 1 flight per day every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Meanwhile, AirAsia Philippines is offering 2 flights a day to Caticlan for the whole month of October. Wednesdays, 2 flights a day beginning October 2, Wednesdays and Fridays starting October 7, and Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays beginning October 11. Among the airline's requirements, a medical certificate issued by any government physician, a travel authority pass issued by the Philippine National Police, a health declaration card, a negative RT-PCR test result taken within 72 hours of departure, and booking confirmation details for hotel resort to be presented upon check-in and arrival.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN Secretariat, the mission of the Republic of Korea to ASEAN, and the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management launched the ASEAN Standards and Certification for Experts in Disasters Management, or ASEAN, project to strengthen the region's capability in managing natural disasters and to become a global leader in this field by 2025. The three-year project will enhance the capacity of disaster management professionals from the ASEAN member states by setting higher standards and quality of training in disaster management, as well as certifications for professionals based on agreed ASEAN standards. The Republic of Korea has contributed more than $3.3 million to the project through the ASEAN-Korea Cooperation Fund, or the AKCF. ASEAN Secretary General Dato Lim Jok-hoy said, and I quote, "This project is one of the deliverables and priorities of the AADMER Work Program, or the AWP, and the implementation of this project will contribute towards the realization of ASEAN's goal to become a global leader in disaster management by 2025, end quote. He expressed appreciation to the Republic of Korea for their support and contributions to ASEAN in the areas of disaster management and health.
After 8 months of being COVID-free, the province of Batanes has reported its first case on Tuesday, a locally stranded individual who recently went home to the province. The Department of Health said all provinces have reported at least one new case in the past 28 days. They also said that they're monitoring if all previously reported confirmed cases have recovered, discharged, and reintegrated, and close contacts completed quarantine. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Congratulations! Lloyd Sarausos!
Pinangako ko rin sa sarili ko na kahit anong mangyari, kahit ilang beses madapa, babangon at babangon ako para abutin ang aking pangarap.
Eric and Jenny Morandarte!
Makikita mo yung pagmamahal kapag magkasama kayong kumakanta.
Mas na kumakanta kami ng mula sa puso.
Purple Heart!
Here I am joining Tagi sa Nanggaling, hoping that the judges will also see the star in me.
Tatlong contenders ang magtutunggalian sa kantahan. Abangan natin kung sino kina Lloyd Sarausos, Eric and Jenny Morandarte, at Purple Heart ang unang pagpwesto sa quarter elimination.
Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is co-presented by Cooper, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Cooper, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Our sponsors, BDO, we find ways. JRC Industrial Sales, RS Square Variables Incorporated, your trusted UPS supplier and UPS maintenance provider in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Chris Rack Enterprises, Victory Carpentry, DOP Asiatic Pest Control Services, and AUB, Aspire for the Future, in partnership with New Era University ETAP, Expanded Tertiary Education, Equivalency and Accreditation Program. Embrace Cafe, we embrace differently abled persons.
Anong unang gagawin mo pag umiyak? Will you,
Pag makita kita sa Barangay Aguila, pag makabalik ka, hindi ko alam.
Mapapatalong ka ba papunta sa akin? Tatakbo ka ba?
Grabe naman.
Layakapin mo ba kagad ako?
Ako, pagalitan pa ako ni Mommy G. Sabi niya, "Uy, ikaw ha, iring-iring ka." Iring-iring. Oo, sabi, ikaw ha? Ganyan.
Halimbawa,
Pagalitan ako ni Mommy G. Siyempre, yakapin kita. Karding!
Gaano kahigpit?
Kaya lang, galing ka pa ng di ba? Dubai, karding!
Hindi, siyempre, nakaligo na. Ikaw naman.
Ang COVID!
Siyempre, nakaligo na ako niya. Pag pumunta ako sa'yo, mabango na ako.
Parang tingtang mo na. Quarantine ka muna.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya. May sakit na lumalaganap, lunas di pa nahahanap. May paraan para wag kumalat, kaalaman ay ipamalas. Pag-aralan o dali na, simulan ang disiplina. Mapahamak ay hindi na, lahat ito ay makakaya. May tamang paraan ng paghuhugas ng kamay. Distansya, pila-pila, takpan ng bibig. Stay sa bahay. Tumagin ka, isa tayo, nabilang sa pagsubok. Sama-sama natin talunin sa COVID-19. Sa COVID-19.
Yo! Lahat tayo ay nababahala, ang dami ng gawain na naaantala. Atensyon nyo'y kailangan ng italaga. Kailangan mo na magtiis at magtiyaga. Yes! Kalusugan ay kaligtasan, lumalalang sakit ay kayang iwasan. Mag-ingat, sumunod, ito'y malulunasan. Darating din ang ginhawa ng kinabukasan.
May tamang paraan ng paghuhugas ng kamay. Distansya, pila-pila, takpan ng bibig. Stay sa bahay. Umaging kaisa tayo, nabilang sa pagsubok. Sama-sama natin talunin sa COVID-19. Sa COVID-19. Umaging kaisa tayo, nabilang sa pagsubok. Sama-sama natin talunin sa COVID-19. Sa COVID-19.
Welcome back. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the Pacific Alliance, or PA, a regional integration initiative comprising Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru, met on September 29 via video conference to further strengthen relations between the two organizations during their first ever interface between the Committee of Permanent Representatives to ASEAN, or CPR, and the national coordinators of each Pacific Alliance member. Both sides had a fruitful exchange of views on a broad range of issues, including collective efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the efforts related to the recovery efforts of the negative impact of the pandemic on the world economy. The ASEAN side described efforts to combat the pandemic in the region, including the holding of special ASEAN summits, cooperation with ASEAN's dialogue partners, as well as the establishment of COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund. The meeting also noted the recent developments in ASEAN and the Pacific Alliance, and that includes the outcomes of the 53rd ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings, and the 35th ASEAN Summit. The two sides also recognized the benefit of continuing to enhance economic ties. The two sides also agreed to explore further cooperation through the development of a new ASEAN-Pacific Alliance Work Plan 2021 to 2023 to include areas such as the 4th Industrial Revolution, trade and investment, connectivities, micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MISMIS, or MSMEs, education, science, technology and innovation, digital economy, and sustainable development.
The third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit convened with government officials and business leaders advocating for inclusive business strategies that support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to recover from economic setbacks during the COVID-19 pandemic in the Southeast Asia region. The region already faced an ambitious challenge to reach its SDG targets by 2030. There are concerns that this may be moving even further out of reach. Organized by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or the ESCAP, the Inclusive Business Action Network, or the IBAN, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, the summit marked the continued commitment of the ASEAN community, including government representatives, the private sector, investors, and development organizations to create an enabling ecosystem for inclusive businesses.
We met in this forum only 1 year ago, but in the span of that 1 year, COVID-19 has dramatically changed the world that we live in. After years of progress, poverty and hunger in our region are on the increase. And in a way, the pandemic is challenging not only the possibility of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the future, but also many of the achievements made so far. But if these past few months have shown us anything, it is that change is certainly possible. For Southeast Asia, that change will need to be underpinned by tackling inequality, by bridging the digital divide, greening the economy, and upholding human rights and good governance practices. And these are the pillars that were identified by the United Nations Secretary General. So in a way, the question in front of us today is whether inclusive business can be a vital part of the transformations needed in Southeast Asia to put Southeast Asia on a path to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and in helping address the social and economic challenges posed by COVID-19. Inclusive businesses are delivering essential and affordable medical services, including maternal care, to low-income groups in urban and peri-urban communities in India, and making medical consultations possible through mobile applications in Myanmar. Inclusive agri-businesses are providing increased income opportunities to tea farmers in Vietnam and rice farmers in Thailand. Inclusive businesses are also offering greener energy alternatives to low-income groups, from selling biomass cookers to remote areas in northern Vietnam, to enabling household rural electrification through solar grid systems in Cambodia. These are but a few of the examples. But beyond the examples, we see three fundamental ways in which inclusive businesses are helping to deliver a green, inclusive, and resilient ASEAN. Firstly is women's economic empowerment. By definition, inclusive businesses support those further behind and include low-income women in their value chains. Many provide income opportunities to women, often low-income women. And with women so often left behind, catalyzing women's economic empowerment is going to be critical for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and from recovering from the shock of COVID-19. The global pandemic has had a devastating impact on already vulnerable MSMEs. During the initial 2 months of the pandemic, over 60% of SMEs may have closed in the Philippines and Laos PDR, and over 40% in Thailand and Indonesia. And the Director General mentioned a few of these other figures before me in terms of the impact that MSMEs have seen. But inclusive businesses support MSMEs in their value chains, providing market access, developing skills, and facilitating access to finance. So their role in building back better is critical. Thirdly is digital transformation. The pandemic has exposed the widening digital divide between and within countries. Inclusive businesses are really born innovators. They often introduce digital innovations and, in the process, enable small economic actors to benefit from digital services and build digital skills. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, inclusive businesses can certainly show the way for scaling up the role of business to do good. But for this to happen, we need innovative government policies that incentivize businesses to focus on creating social and environmental value, as well as economic value. And in this regard, ASEAN has very much shown leadership in taking action at the national level as well as at the ASEAN-wide level, with the support of the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on SME Development. The recent endorsement of the regional guidelines for the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN by the ASEAN economic ministers is a clear sign of this.
Let me now turn to Perry from Manila Water. I must confess I'm a bit starstruck because a few years ago I undertook some personal research on a broad topic of inclusive economies. So I did a big study on Manila Water. So it's great that you can make it today. Of course, many of you know Water Manila is a private water services company serving the poorest neighborhoods in Metro Manila. Can you share with us what some of the innovations that Manila Water have introduced to make sure that you were able to provide essential water services to some of the poorest neighborhoods while still being able to be commercially viable and make a profit? Over to you, Perry.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this prestigious summit. Allow me first to describe the business model of Manila Water because I think it is best to describe it so that you will understand the transformation that we have undertaken the past 20 years. We are celebrating our 23rd year today. So we are a full-service private water listed company. When you say full service, we are in source development, distribution, and wastewater treatment. Our businesses span a lot of urban areas. The biggest, obviously, is the eastern zone of Metro Manila, as well as 18 more urban areas in the Philippines, as well as we are also quite significant player in Ho Chi Minh City, as well as the eastern corridor of Thailand. We were born out of the privatization program of the government 20 years ago, when at that time, service level in Metro Manila was considered one of the poorest, actually. So our transformative programs, which we initiated, has three elements or pillars. The first is, it is important to prepare the organization to respond to the challenges of delivering essential service. So part of the privatization program was to absorb about 2,100 former government employees. So the first part of the transformation is the mindset orientation of the employees that we inherited from government. And that was an exciting exercise because I was there in 1997. The strategy was decentralization and empowerment to ensure accountability for results and upskilling of our employees and ensuring that these are sustained. The second pillar is operating efficiency. Just imagine, and before we took over, nearly 65% of water in the distribution system got lost through pilferage and leaks. We have now brought that down to 10-12%. It is one of the best improvement in operating efficiency. And the third is in sustainability. I think very early in our concession, we thought that if we don't serve the urban poor, then we cannot call our business sustainable, because at that time, if you're not, a lot of people are not connected to the distribution system, and we exerted effort through our Too Big Para sa Barangay, that's our urban poor program, where we successfully interconnected about 2 million poor people. The challenge right now under the COVID situation is the government has reported over 1.5 million people has just joined the ranks of the low income again. And that means we have to reinvent our urban poor program so that we continue to deliver essential service to our customers, especially the low-income households.
So why is it important to have an enabling policy environment? That's the first question. Well, as you know, it's business that drives the economy. It's business that takes the risk in these ventures. And in so doing, they create jobs, create wealth, and hopefully everyone's led to prosperity. But the main question is this business conducted in an inclusive manner? Is there fairness, good governance? Is it sustainable? Or are the rich just getting much richer? Which is not bad in itself. But the issue is the divide getting wider, which is not sustainable. Well, that's where government comes in, to address the gaps, to level the economic playing field, create opportunities. In fact, I have to tell you that oftentimes it's government who creates barriers which does not facilitate business and trade. They create barriers for purposes of protecting industries and businesses, but in the wrong way, because it does not help business to grow and mature and be competitive. So yes, we do need government that does not create barriers and works closely with private sector. That's why ASEAN-Pacific and the Joint Business Councils early on during the pandemic has come up with 225 concrete actionable recommendations to help address COVID-19 with both health and economic measures to do now urgently on a short-term basis that leads to containment of the pandemic and as we reopen our economies toward sustainability. But we need fast decision-making and execution at this very trying times. Otherwise, we're just piling up many recommendations to government which never see daylight. So as mentioned earlier, we have to get out of our comfort zone during this time. And I'm pleased to say that inclusive business is very much part of our agenda. And through our report, which is called the Pathway 225 or Pathway Towards ASEAN Recovery and Hope, we have shifted from our focus from being policy or broad-based policy focus to more action-based. And I'm happy to announce that ASEAN-Pacific fully supported the launching of the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance, which was spearheaded by our partner ASEAN CSR Network. It puts together these businesses who have the passion for moving inclusive business in different areas where they are most interested in. As you know, in pushing for any reforms, you need 4 elements. Number 1, a champion. In this regard, we have ASEAN CSR Network. Number 2, you need a platform to scale up. And we have ARIBA, the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance, wherein people can exchange ideas, best practice, resources, and so on. And of course, an agenda, which has now become very clear and very important. And last of all is government support. And that's why we're happy to be working very closely with the ACSME in the second time of the IB Awards, the Inclusive Business Awards, which will be undertaken in November during our ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. So if you want to put action in IB, sustainability, ESG, migrant workers, decent work, they're all under the umbrella of sustainability. You can join ARIBA, you can join us, so that we can help promote it together, make it more exciting, and provide us and make us your support group.
Inclusive businesses provide goods, services, and livelihoods on a commercially viable basis to people living at the base of the pyramid, making them part of the value chain of companies as suppliers, distributors, retailers, or customers.
Thank you, Chriselle, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Alma, for having me today.
Okay, Chriselle, are you still there? Okay. So, Chriselle, that is the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today again. I'll see you back next time.
Thank you so much, Alma. Again, reporting live from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, I am Chriselle Yacuna. We live in interesting times.
And I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.